Good evening and welcome to the South Dade Democratic Black Caucus Ron Brown Chapters Candidates Forum Series. I am Venus Mia Lovely, the first Vice President of this chapter. Tonight, being the first in our series of forums, you will get a chance to hear from the Democratic candidates for the Florida House of Representatives District 117. District 117 covers parts of Kendall, West Perrine, South Miami Heights, Goulds, Princeton, Naranja, Leisure City, Homestead, and Florida City. It is my honor to introduce our moderator for tonight, Senator Daryl L. Jones. After serving as a fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force, he began his legal career in 1987 when he graduated cum laude from the University of Miami School of Law. In 1990, Senator Jones was elected to the Florida House of Representatives, and in 1992 to the Florida Senate, where he served until 2002. Help me welcome Senator Daryl L. Jones.
Thank you, Venus Mia. It's wonderful to be here. We have a group of outstanding candidates tonight. Welcome everyone to the South Dade Democratic Black Caucus Democratic Candidate Forum. We've got some outstanding candidates here running for District 117, and we'd like to get started right now. The three candidates are Kevin Chambliss, Daryl Ford, and Jessica Laguerre Hylton. That's in alphabetical order. No one is being preferred over another. But I do want to take the time here to say that they're all outstanding candidates. I've had a chance to review their histories, their resumes, and in some cases to meet them. And I think that District 117 cannot go wrong with these three candidates. Well, first let's begin with a few icebreaker questions just to get these candidates warmed up. So we're going to start out in alphabetical order with Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Ford, and then Ms. Hylton, but then we're going to mix it up. What three words would describe you best as a politician, Mr. Chambliss? Here's Mike.
Enthusiastic.
There you go.
Community and country. Did you hear me? I'll say it again. Three words that would describe me most as I'm a public official would be enthusiastic, family, and country.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Ford, what three words that describe you?
Yes. Good evening. The three words that I would say is committed, compassionate, and servant.
Excellent. Ms. Laguerre Hylton, you? What three words?
I too, thank you. I too would say compassion, but also vision and integrity.
Okay. So here's where you all have an opportunity to tell us something about yourselves that's relevant but may not be known by the public at large. Mr. Ford. Something relevant about you that may not be known about the public you would like them to know about.
I'm sorry, my internet connection is choppy and I didn't hear your question.
Tell us something about yourself that's relevant but might not be known by the public at large about you.
Well, one thing I will say is that I'm a hard. Well, my family has an interesting history in that my grandfather used to work on a plantation, and during that time, and this was right around the late 1920s, he was asked to go, if he wanted to go to the bank the following morning, because the bank was going to close. So he and the gentleman that owned the plantation went to the bank, came back home with their, I guess, deposits from the bank. And who would know that that was actually the beginning of the Great Depression? So that's a part of my family's history that I definitely love to share, and want people to know that, hey, there are times when God will stand in for you when you least expect it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hylton, what's something that's relevant about you that the public at large may not know about?
Well, mine might not be as kosher as everyone else's answer, but I used to actually skip school in high school and middle school to go to county commission meetings and for me to find out how the process went and how I was able to get potholes fixed in front of Colonial Drive Elementary when I used to walk to school.
It's nice. A lot of initiative when you're young.
Yeah.
Mr. Chambliss, what's something that's relevant about you that the public at large may not know about you?
All right, awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the question. So, I actually was born and raised in Mississippi. I grew up in a very agricultural community. I always have a country boy from Mississippi, and I went to an HBCU. Was it HBCU? It was Jackson State University. Home of the Sonic Boom.
All right. However, you might want to take a look at the audio from Mr. Chambliss. I know I'm not hearing him that well, but I did hear Jackson State University. So, all right. So, Ms. Hylton, what accomplishments do you think best qualify you to represent District 117?
I will say two things. One, my experience as an entrepreneur, and my background in public service. I started my first company when I was 17 years old, right here in South Dade, when I was working for an organization that would have tutoring services and after-school programs for kids in Cutler Manor. It was there that I really started to find out just how much I really wanted to give back to the community that has given so much to me. And it was at that time that I really discovered that part of my entrepreneurial spirit and my desire for writing and helping the community would all tie in together. I have been an advocate ever since then, but before then. But I think that really solidified for me that there were good people here who wanted to make sure that their community was better, and that I was on the right path by making sure that I was sticking alongside those people.
Thank you. Mr. Chambliss, what accomplishments do you think best qualify you to represent the citizens of District 117? Mr. Chambliss. Tell you what, he's not up right now. Mr. Ford, are you able to answer that question? Can you hear me? Mr. Ford?
Yes, sir. Well, I would say being a career educator in the education system for 22 plus years, and also having a business background as well, bring two skill sets that I think, would allow me to lend a lot of expertise, a lot of experience, as well as a lot of passion for those particular areas, because I know small businesses drive our economy. And then our education system is so critical that we must have someone that has the knowledge, that has the know-how, and that has the experience in helping to turn it around, and especially getting our kids academically accelerated as we attempt to recover from COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Chambliss, are you able to hear us?
I am. I did have to go out and come back in. If you could repeat the question, I'm ready for you.
Be happy to. What accomplishments do you think best qualify you to represent District 117?
Thanks so much for the question. I think that my experience both in government as a community liaison for every congressperson that has served in South Dade since 2012. It's a great experience, but also my experience as a community activist, as just someone who, whether it's the Homestead Florida City Democrats, whether it's the NAACP, the Southeast Dade Ministerial Alliance, or whether it's just going and forming a basketball team with kids from the neighborhood to get them something to do. I think those particular efforts are really what make me the most qualified person to serve the district, because not only have I worked in the district, but I've spent time serving in extracurricular activities to learn and to understand all of the different needs of the district from the families themselves.
Thank you. So now that you guys have had an opportunity to warm up a little bit here, as a politician, it takes a few minutes to clear your throats. Let's go ahead and start getting into some real substantive areas. We're going to cover about 6 areas tonight. We're going to talk about criminal justice to start, then we're going to go into the economy and jobs. Third, we'll cover some educational issues. Healthcare will be fourth, followed by housing, and then finally some transportation questions. And if we have time at the end, we'll bring on some additional questions that have been, all of these questions, by the way, come from people who are in the audience and people who are listening here today. So just remember, every one of them is a voter. So all of these questions are important to everyone that's listening. First, in the area of criminal justice, everybody knows what's going on. In light of the recent protests regarding police brutality and continued racism, what guidelines and legislation do you think are needed out of Tallahassee? We'll begin with Mr. Chambliss. You're back on deck.
Yeah, it's very important that this is one of the first pieces of legislation that is brought up in Tallahassee. It's a very important discussion, and we cannot wait to take action. It has to be priority on day one. That's why I've had conversations with the Democratic Caucus leadership to make sure that they shared my vision of addressing this issue day one. What we've learned from our history is that many times it's the investigation and or the lack of prosecution of police officers that have done wrong that really begs the question of where is the justice. And so it's important that we bring in entities like the FDLE who can impartially investigate these crimes and make sure that all the municipalities in South Dade have a relationship with them. But more than anything else, it definitely has to be a priority day one. And I've made sure that the leadership will uphold that particular priority.
Thank you. Ms. Hylton, so what guidelines and legislation do you think are most needed in light of police brutality in our protests?
Thank you for beginning with this question. I believe what needs to be in place is what the people have been screaming and shouting for the longest: police reform and oversight committees. In addition to that, what I would propose is license and insurance for each police officer. As we can see with Minneapolis and with so many other cities, so many officers, like Kevin mentioned, yes, the prosecution, making sure that they actually prosecuted, making sure that they actually get the charges. But what enables them to continue with the behavior are sometimes police unions. Unions are an amazing tool to make sure that there's equity and equality across the board for different sectors, but it can also be a hindering block if there isn't proper oversight or reform to ensure that the people who are being covered by the union are doing what they're supposed to and doing their jobs with character and integrity. So licensing and ensuring every single police officer.
All right, great. Mr. Ford, what kind of legislation or guidelines do you think is necessary in light of the protests and police brutality? Ms. Ford.
Well, two things I would do. One, the first thing is looking just at needs to be held. There needs to be some level of accountability. Now, one of the first things that I would do to provide some support to officers is that require psychological exams annually. So that, again, if we find that an officer is having some type of breakdown or shut down, then we can quickly get him out of the community so that he's not an endangerment, and get him or her some help if they need it. Next, we would examine that piece called qualified immunity. Officers have guidelines that they're supposed to follow. They're the trained professionals. And if you have 100% of your officers receiving the same level of training, then you have a few who are deviating from that training and doing things on their own. What's going to happen is, again, if they know that qualified immunity will affect them if they step out of the guidelines that they were prepared and trained to uphold, then I think that will reduce a lot of what's transpiring and what's taking place in our communities. Thank you.
Also, staying on the issue of criminal justice, as everyone knows, African Americans and people of color are clearly overrepresented in our criminal justice system and in prisons. What legislation would you propose that would decrease the population of minorities in prison? Ms. Hylton.
Well, one thing as it pertains to here, I just want to put this shameless plug in. Oh, my time is incorrect. I want to make sure that people know that they should be voting, voting for your state attorneys, voting for your sheriffs. I would do away with direct filing when it comes to juvenile justice, or seriously doing away with direct filing. But in addition to that, making sure that there's an exhaustion of rehabilitative services before it gets to the point where you're actually convicting people and sending them away for life. There is an organization that is currently fighting for a reform right now in the state of Florida to get to get the sentence reduction and change, the criteria change for capital punishment. So one of those things, as it stands right now, if you commit a felony, if you commit murder, or someone dies in the act of you committing another felony, you're automatically given the same punishment, the maximum time, just the same way as you would for someone who committed capital murder. So supporting legislation that makes sure that there's a differentiation between those that are premeditated acts and those that happen within the act of a felony. So it doesn't do away with the actual punishment, but it lessens something that wasn't intentional.
Thank you. Mr. Chambliss.
Thank you for the question. One of the things that I see actually is a stronger investment in early childhood education. I think prevention is the key. We have to get ahead of the problem before it becomes a problem. So I definitely think more investment in early childhood education, mentoring programs. These programs work. We know that for a fact. It's research-based. And I think that has to be an emphasis. See, we have to, as a community, begin to redefine what it means to be a police officer, what policing is, redefine it. And what I mean by that is we need more officer friendly. We need more community police officers that can intervene into problems. Therefore, what we're doing is we're curbing the track of young African Americans, the track into the penal system. We're curbing it to more positive things. And I think that investing and rethinking policing can solve this.
Start on the problem early. Great. All right. Next. Are you familiar with the Police and Correctional Officers Bill of Rights? And if so, are there any changes that you would propose to that Bill of Rights? Mr. Ford? Mr. Ford? Are you familiar with
I'm sorry, were you calling me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was calling, yeah.
The sound is going out.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Police and Correctional Officers Bill of Rights? And if so, are there any changes that you would propose to it?
Well, again, I will not sit here and I would be remiss if I said I was 100% versed in the Police Officers Bill of Rights. But as it stands, obviously there are obvious things that can be done to put a little bit more accountability within what is provided within that particular statute. Because again, as it stands, it's not obviously doing enough to assist the community and protecting the community from those officers, especially people of color, from receiving some level of abuse by various police officers. So again, looking at some of the catch-alls that we talked about before when we talked about criminal justice reform, this is another area in which I would definitely lay eyes on and give a little bit more, I guess, thought to, as far as how we can further enhance this particular statute so that it works more for the community, or better for the community, especially people of color, as opposed to allowing it to stand where it is in its present state. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hylton? Are you familiar with the Police and Correctional Officers Bill of Rights? And if so, amended?
Yes, part of it. So the part that I am familiar with is the part that I want changed. And part of that is the ability for officers to be able to bring charges or to seek damages against someone who would bring charges against them. So the same philosophy that police officers would use as it pertains to the black community, if you didn't do anything wrong, then you really don't have anything to be afraid of. So the fact that an officer can actually commit a crime, or someone could bring charges to an officer or allegations to an officer, and then they can now seek damages for that, and then without even having an internal investigation cleared, I think is preposterous. We actually have a case in Georgia where there's a gentleman who actually a police officer who killed someone, and when his family tried to sue, he sued the police department and said that he broke his hand in the process of killing the gentleman and was able to get off free and seek damages. That is a problem, and that is an issue that needs to be addressed in their Bill of Rights.
Thank you. Mr. Chambliss?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We definitely have to reanalyze that from top to bottom. Is that we know, as I was mentioning earlier, that when the community does not see prosecution, does not see officers who clearly have done something wrong, made a mistake, whatever the case may be, when we don't see the justice system have the ability to address it, that's when we have generations of kids that lose faith in the justice system. So we have to re-examine the Police Bill of Rights. I said this in the last forum. We have to make sure that the same justice that's carried out for the everyday citizen is also carried out for our law enforcement. Look, we love our law enforcement. We want to stand with them, but we can't stand by when we see an injustice happen. And it's very important. We know that there are cases here in Miami-Dade County where the state attorney has not been able to prosecute someone because they were protected by whether it was immunity or whether there was a clause. We have to renegotiate that, because we have kids that I mentor right now that are seeing police officers kill a black man and go free, and now they have lost all faith in our justice system.
Thank you. Would you support or propose legislation that decriminalizes marijuana for all? Mr. Ford? Mr. Ford, would you support or propose legislation that decriminalizes marijuana?
I want to make sure I did hear you correctly. You asked if I would support legislation to decriminalize marijuana?
Or support or propose? Yes. Yes.
Yes, I would. And I would also advance it to the point to where those that have those low-level or nonviolent crime or offenses be also there. I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Yes, I would support it. I would also advance it to the point, or expand it to the point, to where those that have low-level offenses that are currently incarcerated, those offenses would end up either being commuted or cleared up for those particular individuals. Because again, at the end of the day, our goal is to fix the system well, not fix the system. We got to break it and then refix it, because the system is already actually fixed to do what it's designed to do. That has always been my position. And in order to address the issue of over-incarceration of young Black males in particular, as well as females, what we need to do is, again, some of those low-level offenses, decriminalize, and then let's find a way to get them back into being productive citizens as they re-enter society. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hylton, would
I
you
agree 100%.
legislation decriminalize? Go ahead.
Yes, I would. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do agree 100% with what Mr. Ford said. I would propose legislation. I would support a decriminalization of it. I remember sitting down in a forum with Senator Bullard a couple of years ago, and he explained his position on it and how, as we mentioned before, even as you prefaced the question, that there's so many minorities, Black and brown people, who find themselves at the ugly end of the marijuana industry. Now that it's popular, now that there's a way to make profit from it, that's when you start to see the true hearts of the people. And so I would definitely support legislation to decriminalize marijuana.
Mr. Chambliss, did you hear the question?
Yeah, we are way past time to do this. Honestly, as a country, this is something that we really analyze. I mentioned before, we lost the war on drugs. We need to rethink the way that we address this issue. We also know when it comes to Black and brown communities that there have been times where little small nickel and dime bags of marijuana have been used to get people into the process so that the police officers can interrogate them or begin to create a rap sheet for them, which eventually destroys their futures because of one mistake. So definitely and absolutely, but also we need to make sure that as the industry, as the marijuana industry grows, that we as African Americans begin to invest in it. We need to invest in agriculture. As a staffer for Congressman Joe Garcia, I was able to bring $40,000 to $50,000 in loans and grants to Black farmers in South Dade so they could begin to invest in agriculture. We have to be a part of this industry moving forward.
Thank you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're done with the criminal justice section of our forum. Let's talk about the economy and jobs. What would be your position or your plan for stimulating and supporting economic growth for South Dade County? Mrs. Hylton.
Now we get to the good stuff. For me, that this is something that's dear to my heart. Making sure that we have programs and initiatives that are geared towards equity. So a lot of times we hear this conversation about equality and people don't understand the difference between equity. Equality, everybody starts at the same line. But as we know all too well, when someone has a 400-year head start, it's very hard to start at the same line in the name of equality. So making sure that our area has CDFIs, so alternative to funding institutions, and making sure that we have the support, the technical skills and training and resources to jumpstart entrepreneurship and to support it here. So one of the things that has really bothered me so far, if you look at everything going on with COVID-19, the one major mall that services our area in the district is in foreclosure right now. And it's not to say that people shouldn't pay their bills, because they need to pay their bills, but there needs to be some form of rental cap when it comes to commercial property. There needs to be some form of technical assistance and an organization that really steps up to be able to support the businesses. I want to shout out Accelerate South Dade, who's been doing a wonderful job at making sure that our small business owners have the resources that they need, but ensuring that we have the dollars to back up where our mouths are.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chambliss.
That was a great shout out, by the way. So yeah, I definitely think that we have to invest in small businesses and entrepreneurship moving forward. We need to invest in our youth learning trade skills and getting the expertise and support so they can grow up to become their own contractors moving forward as well. One of the proposals that I have submitted to the City of Homestead leadership on numerous occasions is using some of the facilities that they have that aren't being rented, aren't being used, and many of them, if you know the area, Maury Drive in the Southwest community, creating a small minority business incubator there and investing in it, giving contractors an opportunity to begin to come to South Dade to compete for contracts and to be a part of the process more, because we know that there's a lack of Black business contractors that are competing. So I think investment in small business is crucial, as well as the training for our youth, making sure that they're trained in the trades and know how to become contractors of their own.
And supporting economic growth. Mr. Ford. Mr. Ford, can you hear us? Muted. Over, could you unmute Mr. Ford? We're stuck here. We're going to have to give you a little more time here in a minute. Mr. Chambliss, we're going to come back to you real quick since your mic is.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go, Mr. Ford. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Not a problem. I'll be quick.
Go ahead.
I'll be quick. First and foremost, I would say we missed the golden opportunity when the stimulus bill was signed, because we did not push for a large enough push.
You're muted. There we go.
Going back, someone muted my microphone. First and foremost, I would say that we did not push, there was not a strong enough push for small minority businesses to take advantage of the stimulus monies that were allocated by Congress just recently. And it's also a challenge because, again, without that money, which would have helped them stay afloat, hopefully until we see the other side of this pandemic, that was a golden, I hate to say parachute, but that was a golden opportunity that was definitely missed by many of our small minority businesses in South Dade, more so Miami-Dade County as well. Also, I think if we want to parallel something to affordable housing, what we should also look at is possibly an affordable rentals SIP program here in Miami-Dade County that will help small businesses so that when they are in places and they can move into places where the rents may not be as affordable, but with that particular subsidy, it'll definitely make it a lot easier for them to, one, get themselves established and then move forward and try to grow their business, build capacity, and then hopefully become more profitable along the way. Thank you. You're muted, Senator.
Oh, okay. I'm muted now. I think
no, now you're unmuted.
All right. So, Mr. Chambliss, you kind of alluded to this a moment ago. Do you have any regarding the significant agricultural community that we have in South Dade?
Repeat the question.
Do you have any particular plans for significant agricultural community that we have in South Dade?
Plans to stimulate the agricultural community in South Dade, absolutely. We know that here in South Dade, the driver or the gasoline to our economic engine is agritourism. And so we have to make sure that moving forward, we invest significantly in agriculture to not only make sure that they stay afloat and that they thrive and continue to be a strong industry moving forward, but also that they have the means to compete with other countries when it comes to trade, and making sure that anytime that they have issues, whether it's a beetle that destroys crops or whether it's the water flooding the crops that they can't grow, that they're protected. Because if COVID has taught us anything, it should have taught us that we need to make sure that we have our own food source here in the United States. And a strong agricultural community is a strong South Dade community financially. That's something that I'm going to be focusing on, and that's something that I'm going to carry as your next state representative.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ford, do you have any plans regarding the agricultural community in South Dade County? Mr. Ford. Do you have any?
One of the first things that I would do is, one, connect with them and let's have a sit down conversation. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at the trends over the last 20 years, I mean, being a lifetime resident, I've seen where we were 90+% agriculture, and now that has gone down tremendously compared to when, I was in my younger years. So understanding that and seeing a lot of our agricultural companies who are very large at one point selling off their lands to developers for whatever reason. And so the key is finding out exactly where do they see themselves, or where would they like to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years, so that I can strategize with them and provide them with the necessary resources and support so that whatever their endeavor is, it becomes mine as well. So as it relates to the agricultural community, yes, it is large, but it's not nearly as large as it used to be 20+ years ago as I grew up in this community. So I would first go to them, ask them where they would like to position, how they would like to position themselves, and then move forward from there. Thank you.
Mrs. Hylton, thank you. Ms. Hylton, do you have any idea or plans for the agricultural community in South Dade County?
Yes, I do. It's part of a strategic plan that I've been mapping out for a while called Shop Dade First. And so one of the things, Nikki Fried, during COVID-19, since everything has started, has pushed for an initiative that was started by San Mercutio Farms, which is here in the South Dade community, where they were able to sell directly to consumers and change their business model from B2B to B2C. So keeping and staying along the same lines, we're seeing that everybody's response to COVID-19, because you can't think of how we're going to move forward as a community without having the conversation as it pertains to COVID. Given the way that many governors and many different states have different regulations and have been addressing COVID-19 very differently, it's safe to say that you would be much safer receiving your food and limiting the chain of custody when it comes to your food. So making sure that there's an implementation of a program that I would call Shop Dade First, where we incentivize and actually give incentives to those businesses who, one, decide to keep their land instead of selling them to developers, because we're still in the fight for overdeveloping in the Everglades, but two, making sure that we are supporting the businesses and the agriculture community that's already here by ensuring that our food is being produced and provided for locally.
All right, great. Ms. Hylton, we want to stick with you on this next question.
Not a problem.
All right. What plans do you have to address the significant economic disparities in the Black community?
Okay, so within our district 117, this is one of the reasons why I'm actually running for office. We have by the grace of God in heaven, we have 3 CRAs within our district, when we know cities and municipalities in our county who are fighting to just get 1. Yet we have not seen an increase in economic in businesses for African Americans. We have not seen an increase in home ownership for African Americans, despite the fact that this money is our money. It comes from the ad valorem taxes. I would fight to end that gray area of preemption that allows the state to encroach in the ability for the CRAs to provide the resources as it was originally designed. For those who are not familiar, a CRA is actually designed with our tax money, with money that we pay from our home taxes, to be able to remove blight, jumpstart economic activity, and support businesses and home ownership. So with that, we have been able to do that because at the state level, they've been reaching down their hands and kind of meddling with some of the things that should be the autonomy of our city. We have 3 CRAs, so I would make sure that they have enough resources and fully empower them to be able to supply the business owners who are seeking that startup support in order to jumpstart economic activity for those communities.
Excellent. Ms. Chambliss, how would you address the severe disparities in the Black community in South Dade?
Thank you for the question, and it's very important. Thank you, Ms. Jessica, for bringing up our CRAs, because we just saw the city of South Miami lose their CRA, and we want want to make sure that the ones that are in the lower South Dade community that we don't lose them, that we support them, but also that, yes, we're using them the right way. So as I mentioned before, I would create small minority business incubators more in the communities to make sure that we're giving small businesses a start, a push off, and support as they begin to grow. We know that the majority of America works and lives off of the business of small businesses. So we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to invest in that and create opportunity and training around that type of investment so that the small businesses can begin to sustain themselves for the future. This is something that I've already had a conversation with the leadership of the city of Homestead, as well as the leadership of Florida City. I look forward to talking with the other municipalities in South Dade to make sure that this is something that becomes a priority for me as I move to become your next state representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chambliss. What plans do you have for addressing the severe economic disparities in the Black community?
Okay, first thing that I would do is I would look to establish a partnership with Miami-Dade County Public Schools focused on entrepreneurship. With that initiative, working with the young people and this next generation that's coming along, it would definitely be prudent for them to have the opportunity to understand things from a different perspective, that small business perspective. Now, yes, we've always been told, get an education, get a job, and work until I guess it's time to retire, and then you fade into the sunset. But this new generation and the current generation of millennials are definitely in position and poised because of the opportunities that are out there for this type of initiative to definitely flip the script. The same way hip hop did for minorities back in the early 80s and 90s, and it made a lot of millionaires. Again, bringing something new, something innovative into their perspective and into their purview is step one. Step two, home ownership initiative. Encouraging and planting seeds about home ownership, helping them understand what credit is, helping them build their credit, empowering them with those pieces so that, again, when it comes time to be ready to purchase that home, they got the idea already so that they're already positioned to move forward. And then last would be a small business initiative so that, again, getting that small business mindset, putting those resources in place so that they're ready to move forward day one when they graduate from school. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, we're going to stick with you on this question. Amendment 2 is going to be on the ballot in the fall.
Okay.
Increase of minimum wage sets it at $10 and over a 6-year period will raise it to $15. Do you support Amendment 2?
I'm sorry, you chopped up on me. I heard bits and pieces, but
let me go ahead. I'll hit it again.
I think it had to do with the raising minimum wage.
Yeah, Amendment 2 to raise minimum wage.
Can you repeat the question?
I will. Amendment 2 is going to be on the ballot in the fall. What it does is raises the minimum wage, starts at $10 an hour, and over a 6-year period brings it up to $15 an hour. Do you support Amendment 2?
Yes, I do. I support it 100% without any hesitation. The bottom line is we live in an area where it is hard to take care of a family at the current minimum wage. It's hard to pay rent, buy food, and also any other expenses that you may have to just live a decent life, not a lavish lifestyle. So yes, I would support Amendment 2 100% without hesitation.
Frozen a little bit there.
Wages for teachers, but also be raising wages for those individuals as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hylton, how do you feel about Amendment 2?
I would definitely support the increase, but what I would also tag on is proposing legislation is to also raise the maximum of increase in the income limits for affordable housing. So as it stands right now, South Dade community has the largest production levels of commercial real estate in South Florida for the past 15 years. So with that, we have so many of these developers who received my God, millions and millions of dollars of tax credits and incentives to ensure that they're building what we would know as affordable housing, low to moderate housing, and extremely low to moderate housing. I would also raise the maximum because we know that, okay, 2026, that's fine that you get it to $15. But by that time, where would our living expenses have gone? Where would our income levels have gone? And as it stands right now, if you're even a dollar over the maximum income allotted for affordable housing, you lose that ability to stay there. So making sure that we not just support the minimum wage increase, but also make sure that there's legislation that is immediately following behind it to raise the maximum for affordable housing, even if it is on a sliding scale to allow people to adjust to that increase.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chambliss, how do you feel about Amendment 2?
Yeah, I think we're all going to be in agreement on this. We all definitely support making sure that we fight for 15, like Jessica said, and beyond. Definitely, I would add on to what she said and say we need to make sure that we have rent control here in the state of Florida, because we see where investors are coming into communities and buying up property under different companies. Many times the companies aren't even from this country, but they're buying up property and then inadvertently increasing the rent that is in an area that many times shouldn't be done at the speed that it's being done. And so we're seeing working families who aren't sure if they're going to be able to keep the roof over their heads because they're worried because the rent got increased 40% in 1 year. So I definitely would add on to that. But also here in South Dade, we need to make sure that we bring living wage jobs to South Dade. I had one elected official who was bragging about the different jobs that he brought to the Homestead, Florida City area. It was an elected official from the city of Homestead. And he said, yeah, but I know that those are all minimum wage jobs, but still, it's a lot of jobs. No, we need living wage jobs here in South Dade to make sure that people aren't having to drive an hour to go to work, but that they can work and live right here in the South Dade community.
Great. All right, so that concludes our economy and jobs section. Let's go ahead and talk about education now. Mr. Chambliss, I'm going to stick with you. The original mission of the Florida Lottery was to help fund education. Are you satisfied with how the lottery dollars are being allocated? If not, how would you change it?
Say the first part one more time. It was a little staticky on the first.
The original mission of the Florida Lottery was to help fund education. Are you satisfied with how those dollars are being presently allocated? And if not, how would you change it?
Well, we know for a fact, I think we'd all agree that public education is severely underfunded. Brother Ford already made reference to the fact that we need to continue and increase the wages for our teachers. For those of you who have families that are kids during this COVID crisis and you've had to play teacher, tutor, PE, you know how important that is. But also, we have to put public school children first. We know that many times these are the ones that are left out. And we can't afford to have those dollars siphoned off to other entities, especially when we know that many times these are the kids who might lack the financial stability to have those resources at home. So absolutely not satisfied with the way that those dollars are being distributed. And I'll be fighting for public education continuously as your next state representative.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, as far as the lottery is concerned, it was supposed to help fund education, and it's doing some of that, but are you satisfied with how those dollars are being allocated? How would you change it? Mr. Ford? Were you able to hear the question, Mr. Ford? Mrs. Hylton, why don't we go with you on that question?
Yeah. So I do want to address one issue, one of the main issues that I have in regards to the Bright Futures Scholarship. So as it stands right now, they receive their funding from the Florida Lottery. However, there's a large amount of Black students who don't receive Bright Futures because they don't qualify under the stipulations that they have. But to address that would mean addressing the systemic issue in the lack of equitable education between one neighborhood and another. The average Black student, by the time they graduate high school, within their family, they can pull together $65,000. The average white student can pull together $400,000. So when you think about higher education, a student can always maybe get by when it comes to public schools. They can maybe get by when it comes to private and charter. But as you get to higher education, which does lead to increasing wages over time. It is statistically proven. It is, and you see it every single day, the difference in wages and the difference in salaries. But it starts with the issue of making sure that the Bright Futures that it's supposed to really fund is truly equitable for everybody who is supposed to receive it, and not just based on the criteria that would be afforded to some who lived in the right zip code at the right time.
Yeah, I created that program, and those criteria have changed over the years significantly. I'm not happy about it.
Yes.
Mr. Ford, are you able to answer that question? Or can you hear us? Mr. Ford, were you, regarding the Florida Lottery and its allocation to education, are you satisfied with how that has been allocated? How would you change it? We're going to have to come back to him later on. All right, Mr.
Yes,
who's that?
I do. Again, signal drop. Nonetheless, no, again, they say a greater emphasis needs to be placed as they matriculate through public education.
Let's see if we can do something to help improve the connection there with Mr. Ford. We will come back and give you additional time if necessary. Mr. Chambliss, you've talked about high quality education already. How do you plan to prioritize learning for the District 1?
If you could repeat the question one time, please. It was a little static.
Earlier, you talked a little bit about how important early childhood education is in children in different ages. How would you prioritize early learning to ensure that all children in District 117 came to school ready for school?
Thank you. So one, I would definitely work to expand funding so that there can be funding where kids from all the communities or more children will be able to participate in programs, whether it's pre-K programs or even daycare. Because what we know that there's a cultural difference between different communities of where some communities, you have uncle, grandma, who they're the daycare. So they don't go to an actual daycare. And you have other communities where all of their kids go to a daycare. And what ends up happening is that they all meet in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, on different levels. And so we have to increase funding there because those are where the basic skills of learning are being taught. Those are where the basic, the importance of nutrition are being installed into a child's diet. It's something that I wholeheartedly believe in. I really think that if we can start from the beginning, then we can save a generation of children from going in the wrong direction, because we knew that they had the same, opportunity moving forward that every other child in the community has. So definitely it will be a priority of mine to expand that program, to make sure that everybody, honestly, from birth to kindergarten, has the same opportunity, if they chose to do so, to have an enriched early childhood education.
Okay. Mrs. Hylton, early childhood education, how would you prioritize that in order to make sure that every child in District 117 showed up ready for school?
I would make sure that there's definitely a push for rate. Well, first I would change the age. So as it stands right now, many households, unfortunately, so in the high number in the Black community, don't know that you can actually start your kids at 3 years old. And they're constantly being turned away and told that their child is supposed to start pre-K at 5. And by the time they get to first grade, they're a year or two behind. I used to be a teacher. I taught every grade from kindergarten to 7th grade. And I saw that the lack of support when it came to early education passed down and made it so difficult for students at one of their most critical grades, which is 3rd grade. So I would constantly have students who were 2 or 3 years older than their white counterparts. And part of that was because of the lack of resources or the hurdles that were put in place for those who really need the support for early education. We know that there are programs that are available, but when you actually go through the process of what's being required, you have to meet a certain income. You have to meet a certain work schedule. And then in order for the parent to even qualify, they have to be working in certain industries. So as it pertains to right now, I would almost follow the same format as you would for charter schools, but make those specifically for communities that are not receiving the resources or have ridiculous red tapes and hurdles to get over, to make sure that their kids are getting the education that they need early.
All right, great. Thank you. Ms. Ford, are you able to
Yes,
talk?
sir.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Early childhood education. And you are, I mean, this is your area. You are as well. And how would you prioritize early childhood education in District 117 to make sure that every child showed up ready for school?
Well, again, first and foremost, it starts with working with parents and communicating with parents and getting them to see the importance of education. Because again, that is the foundation that's going to be laid for the rest of their child's life. And if he or she is not where they need to be to receive, then it's going to be definitely a challenge getting them up to the levels where they need to be as far as proficiency, moving things forward. Now, as it relates to working with the school districts, working with those the region, District 7 and the region offices as well, to find out, hey, do you have any parents that are for some reason not sending their children to school? And what can we do to support them? Again, also getting more resources allocated for early childhood education. We know that there are a number of programs out there throughout Miami-Dade County and throughout South Dade as well. But again, the more that we have, the more that we can provide for young people, especially at those ages. So again, getting our parents, one, informed, involved, and then also partnering with our school district, partnering with the county, partnering with all the different stakeholders to make sure that they are ready to do the work that's necessary to get these young children educated.
All right. Ms. Ford, I want to stick with you. You've been both in the rank and file and teachers environment as well as in administration.
Okay.
Support the direct allocation of funds to schools based on, well, let me back up for a moment. There are several sources of funding in the public school system, as everybody knows. You got federal dollars that come down, you have state dollars that are the majority of it, or a lot of it, and then you have the a significant allocation from property taxes here locally. As it relates to the state dollars, do you support the direct allocation of education funds to schools based upon population, regardless of program costs or teacher seniority?
Again, as I was taught when I went into administration, the dollars follow the children. Now, there are instances where you have low enrollment centers that you need to keep open, so that you have to now act an unbalanced allocation to, meaning more going direction because of the value of that particular center. Now, there are times when we have what we call brain drain, where families are moving to different communities, so those low enrollment centers need to remain open at all costs, or no matter what the cost. However, I think it's imperative that we, again, continue to pay attention to those little islands that I call them from time to time, and make sure that they have the resources that are necessary. Because if we don't, now we've caused ourselves, or we've done more harm to that community than we've done any good. So it's imperative that, yes, when we look at the allocations and how those monies are funneling down and where they're going, it's not always going to be an equitable share all the way across, or an equal share all the way across. We have to look at equity and see what the value of that equity would be in the event that that community is under enrolled, but yet needs those services. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chambliss, as it relates to education funding in schools, do you support the state allocating those funds based on student population, regardless of the program costs or teacher seniority, which are two factors that change the funding?
I'm gonna, if you could repeat it, if you could repeat the question, if you don't mind, I could.
I'll repeat the question.
Here.
Education funding has basically three sources, three primary sources. There are federal dollars, the state dollars that come down on an allocation of dollars per student, and then the property taxes that are paid locally. As it relates to the state dollars, do you favor allocating those dollars based upon school population, regardless of program costs or teacher seniority? Were you able to hear it?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Let's go to Ms. Hylton there for a moment. Ms. Hylton, can you answer that question?
Okay, for me, I don't. So this is my issue with that, with dollars per student. So that means you want more students in order to get more dollars. But as it pertains to the local level and funding from our school board, it goes by the taxes, it goes by education, which that in itself is a form of systemic racism, and it's a form of oppression for the students who don't have it, because the less money that the I guess the neighborhood and the house brings in is the less money that's allocated towards education, which is absolutely disgusting. But while you're increasing the population to make sure that you're increasing the dollars, you're not increasing the teachers. So it hurts the schools that have a larger classroom sizes, which we all know would be the Black community. And because of that, you have the white schools that are not hurting. You have the schools that are within the Black community that's going to be hurt by that the most, because the more that you're increasing the classroom sizes to satisfy that more student, more money frame of mindset that we have with the state, it's the less attention each one of those students is going to get. And it's really, it limits just how effective we really are in education. We're really at that point just putting people through and hoping that they're going to get the resources or actually retain the information that they're getting.
Mr. Chambliss, are you able to talk with us? Mr. Chambliss, can you hear me? Chambliss, are you here? We'll come back to you. All right, let's move on to healthcare. Ms. Ford, I think kind of a softball question. What are your plans during the pandemic?
What are my plans? One, to stay safe. That's the number one plan. However, If you're talking about if I was a member of the Florida House of Representatives, one of the first and foremost things that I would be pushing for is, again, expanding Medicaid. Because with a health crisis, we need access to health care. And without health care, obviously, we're going to see adverse effects that's going to also impact our economy. So we can't get people back to work if they're sick. We can't get them sick. We can't get them well if they don't have access to health care. So as it relates to health care, and what I would push for, that would be the very first and foremost thing that I would push for, is expanding Medicaid.
All right, great, thank you. Very good. Mrs. Hylton, what are your plans during the pandemic? And what do you think about affordable health care in Florida?
So, I would, the answer is expand Medicare, but Medicaid. But more than that, I would make sure that the information is accessible. So we have a unique opportunity in South Florida to be blessed with so many people from so many different cultures and community, but we tend to feel like we're living here by ourselves. I have spent my time during COVID-19 with the newborn, making sure that my husband watches her while I make sure I'm translating information in Haitian Creole and Spanish to reach the populations that are the most vulnerable. I am not surprised that Homestead, which is part of our district, has one of the highest numbers of COVID-19 cases. When we started out a couple of months ago, we were one of the cities with the lowest number of people testing positive for COVID-19. We had an opportunity a couple of months ago to get ahead of it and to make sure that we treated everybody the right way, and we did not do it. And we're seeing the effects of that now. If people don't think that this touches home, these are the people who touch our food. So how about you think about that? These are the people who make sure these fancy hotels and the things that we love. We see that if you go and you do the research, you see a great number of them live in the Homestead area. So yes, expanding Medicaid, but first making the information available to everybody who needs it in a language that they can understand. That's the reality of the United States that we live in. That's the reality of the South Florida in the district that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Chambliss, can you hear us? Mr. Chambliss?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So your plans during the pandemic, and what are your plans to enhance the availability of affordable health care in Florida?
Plans to address healthcare in the state of Florida?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. We all know that we have to increase access to programs like Medicaid. We have to accept the federal doctors for our community. That has to be a priority moving forward. But also, we have to go back and look at exactly who is eligible for Medicaid. Many times we know that there's a loophole there that really needs to address. And so there's a problem with access to health care, because there are families who, they don't have the best paying job, but they're trying and they're working. And so they go out and they get a job, and the husband has a job, the wife has a job, or maybe just the mother has a job, and she falls through a pit hole that doesn't make her eligible for Medicaid. But at the same time, we don't want her sitting on the butt doing nothing. So she ends up getting left out. We have to really address that equation. We have to make sure that all of our families have access to the quality health care that is needed. COVID has taught us that the hard way. And so we definitely, while receiving those dollars, we have to relook at the equation in which we determine who was eligible and who was not.
All right, great, thank you. Let's move on to housing. Hopefully you're familiar with the Sadowski Trust. This year, the governor had a full appropriation of the Sadowski Trust. In other words, he didn't scrape any money from the Sadowski Trust to fund other programs. So that, in essence, is good. It's about $370 million, but it's never enough. Affordable housing is sorely needed in South Dade. How would you increase the allocations of this fund in District 117? Ms. Hylton?
Sorry, my mic was muted. So I would increase allocation by part of the way that I answered the other question, which is to stop preemption. So we tend to be ignored and forgotten south of Dade land. So making sure that I have a very I'm very determined to make sure that I am heard once I get to Tallahassee, that the funds that belong to us come to us. This is our money that's going up there, and we have been contributing to this fund. People have been contributing to this fund for years, yet I do not feel like, I think it should be automatic that it should come down and be dispersed within the communities. But as I mentioned before, part of the true issue is preemption. So we have other vehicles that we could use here, but one of those things is making sure that there is true transparency when it comes to the allocation of those funding. If it's taxpayer dollar, there needs to be 100% transparency as to where those funds are going. There are some cities who don't need the money as much as we do, and making sure that, again, you'll hear my word over and over again, equity, not equality, but equity for those who actually need it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ford, regarding the Sadowski Trust and the Fund for Affordable Housing, how would you go about getting a more significant allocation of those funds in District 117?
Well, again, one of the key things is increasing revenues within the state so that more money can be deposited into the trust. So again, the building of an infrastructure of small businesses, increasing, again, helping people get, higher paying wages. No, I'm sorry, not wages, because we don't pay state income tax,
Yeah.
but businesses that do pay state taxes. Again, more small businesses that we have that are paying into the system, the more money can be pulled put into the trust, so that again, those dollars can then trickle down to assist in broadening this plan. Not only that, but those that are in affordable housing, let's work on an initiative to help them become eventual homeowners. Because again, we don't want to keep people in the rent trap. Our goal is to empower them so that they are homeowners. And as homeowners, now they pay property taxes and other taxes that again, increase our economy, build into our economy, feed our economy, thus making more resources available to continue the cycle. And preferably moving forward, it would allow them to also be beneficiaries, others that come along later to be beneficiaries of that those continual deposits. That's
Very
what
good. All right, Mr. Chambliss. So how would you increase District 117?
Thank you. I appreciate the question. One of the things I would do is I would take a recommendation from Habitat for Humanity and develop what they call communities of opportunity, making sure that we're creating communities, mixed use housing development, and that we're integrating different income levels into those communities, and making sure we're preserving the land and setting aside the land that we have a vast amount of in South Dade for those particular projects. But here's the trick: in South Dade, we know that we allow this overdevelopment of housing. I mean, like it's communities or communities that are being built, but there's no infrastructure that is being built with them. So you have what I call residential deserts. There's a whole bunch of residents, but they don't have the infrastructure and resources that were planned with the housing development to support them. For example, their community works for decades to firefight. If a fire happens, they would have a hard time finding the hydrant because the community wasn't properly developed. So while we're bringing those dollars to the South Dade area, we have to make sure we have development. Also, I believe in making sure that we have infrastructure dollars to do it properly, because all we're doing is adding to our current transportation problem by basically but housing.
All right, great, thank you. So, what is your plan for reducing the rising cost of rent in South Dade County?
Are you speaking with me?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay, I did not. The rising cost of rent. So housing. transparency and rental caps. There needs to be, we have to be a little bit more reserved and how we allocate our funding at a county level. And we can do that by making sure at the legislative level in this position that we're putting things in place that are that put the people over the profit. So we need to make sure that there's a true pathway to home ownership. Mr. Ford mentioned the point is not to keep people in rent, but to make sure that they're homeowners. But while they are in this position as renters, let's not make it miserable for them. Right now, as it stands, residences that we see here, the majority, I want to say a good 60% of like the affordable housing that we have here, 70% in South Dade area, have income restrictions that don't really allow for you to kind of make any changes in your life. It's either you make the money that's within the limit, you stay there, or you pay market rate. And market rate is, you're talking maybe 60% of people's income right now, 60 to 70% of people's income. So making sure that there's rental caps, making sure that there's also, like I mentioned before, even if it's a sliding period within a year, that as you transition to higher wages, that within that year, it allows you to stay in affordable housing without penalizing you for not meeting the maximum income level.
All right. Mr. Chambliss, how would you deal with the rising costs of rent in South Dade?
We definitely have to have rent caps in the state of Florida. It's just a necessity. There's no reason why the rent in the southwest section of Homestead is the same rent that's in our little oasis. That's on the complete opposite side of the city. That doesn't make sense. And so we have to create policy that monitors the way that investment properties are done. We know that outside investors have had a field day in our community going in and buying property and then raising rents at rates that are just unrealistic. So we have to create legislation to address that as well. And then also we have to make sure that when it comes to public housing, that we're not being satisfied with just the assistance of getting someone into public housing. But at the end of the day, we're not talking about rent, but that we're talking about home ownership. Home ownership has to become a major part of this conversation, because the truth is, if you're not a homeowner or a property owner, then aren't you really homeless? And we want to make sure that we create incentive programs that begin to create more homeowners in South Dade, so that people can own their own property, and that they can begin to create financial wealth and stability for their families.
South Dade County.
Okay, first, again, I agree with my sister, Ms. Hylton's assertion of rental caps, because again, without capping the rent levels, things will continue to go high. Even if wages go up, people are going to charge more, rents are going to go up. It's part of an inflationary economic structure. But in addition to that, utilizing Sadowski funds to partner with municipalities, to partner with the counties, to create affordable housing opportunities, which will be more of a rent-to-own program that allows these individuals to get into the home, and helping them as they go through the process of renting, also building their credit, positioning them so that now we can flip it, so that very property that they are now renting, eventually it creates a path to home ownership for them, so that they will be able to, again, eventually turn that thing around, and we can move on to help the next group of citizens or residents within South Dade become on the economic empowerment side, instead of being one who supports another person's wealth. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an innovative idea. I'm not sure why it wasn't done before, but you might, this group might be one that can make something like that happen. Regarding transportation, excluding tolls, because we got plenty of those already, how would you propose that we create a world-class transportation system that helps South Dade County? Oh, Mr. Chambliss, I apologize, Mr. Chambliss. Did you hear the question?
I couldn't get the question. Can we take
All right. Excluding toll, because we have plenty of tolls already on our road. How would you propose that we create or enhance a world-class public transportation system in Miami-Dade County that actually filters down to South Dade?
Yeah, I'm going to try to get headphones because I can't hear the question. We can
All right, I'll try.
if you can hear me, I can do it that way.
I can hear you. There's some scratching in the background. But
All right, I was able to see the question.
Here we go.
So thank you, I appreciate it. So look, we should have had a real from the South Miami down to Florida City. We know that, right? We know that we got the short end of that stick. So that's a fact, right? But now that other things have been proposed, we have to make sure that we relook exactly at how we do transportation in general. One of the things that we need to do is, instead of just relying on the north-south of the busway, is that there needs to be more east-west transportation through communities that are getting people to the busway. That's something that has to be looked at. And we know that, yes, we unfairly get told in South Dade because we only have one way out, and that definitely hurts emergency management planning. But again, I personally think that we also have to look at a moratorium on housing in certain communities, because we know that all we're doing is adding more residents and from outside of South Dade, adding them into South Dade, which is just creating an even bigger traffic problem. So definitely we have to continue to fight for sustainable public transportation in South Dade.
All right, great, thank you. Mr. Ford, excluding tolls, how would you fund a world-class public transportation system in South Dade?
How would I fund it? Well, again, some of it would be public-private partnership, what I would look at. Again, trying to get the allocation from the state to first get it built. Building the rail or connecting the rail from Kendall to Florida City would be priority number one. Getting those funds in place so that we can. Now, if it takes a municipal bond to make it happen, hey, let's go. Let's get it done. Let's make it happen. Because at the end of the day, without it, we're hurting South Dade. More so, we also lost an opportunity to possibly bring higher wage jobs to South Dade because we don't have the transportation infrastructure that's so badly needed in our community. Secondly, we need to also be careful of some of these other organizations that are coming to say that they're trying to improve transportation, when in fact, they're on the verge of hurting South Dade and cutting bus routes. They've already reduced the scale of our bus routes here in South Dade. Instead of full buses, in some cases, we're riding on jitneys when you have 2 and 3 loads of people standing at the bus stop waiting for transportation to come. So again, the funding piece will come, if it has to come through state support, federal infrastructure dollars, or municipal bond. The goal is getting the monies in place so that we can do what we got to do to put the rail in place, and then moving forward from there, address the other areas that connect the people that are west or east of the rail to the rail itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hylton?
Okay, well, for me, first of all, we got to stop being a cheap date. So South Dade, we, again, developers, and I'm not anti-development. I am pro-responsible development. So in high populated areas in India, one of the things that they have in place is that for every 500 square feet of housing that is for profit, developers have to create 250 square feet of living, of housing for those who are homeless, because it's so dense there. There needs to be, because they clearly have the money, a tax or some kind of, I guess, set aside from developers if they want to come build here. You want to come build here? That's great. You received $100 million in tax credits already, so you ain't hurting for money. Go ahead and make sure you slide $50 million of those dollars into a fund to ensure that we're providing the infrastructure to support the houses that you're building and the families that are now coming there. In addition to that, kind of doing an inverted U, right? So making sure that the need for transportation is kind of addressed. The reason why we have such issues and it's so bottlenecked down here is because we have to drive north for jobs. I myself, when I was at FIU, paid $14 every day for toll. And Mr. Ford, we have paid for it. The people have the money and they don't want to spend it. We agreed 13 years ago in South Dade for an increase that we would pay an additional tax just to make sure that the rail was extended, and they didn't give the people what they asked for. You need to give us what we paid for. We need to make sure that we put a tax or some form of like fine on these developers, because you're developing, you're messing up our water, you're doing all these things, and we've looked the other way and became a cheap date. But we need to make sure that we're holding them accountable, and that part of their money that they're receiving from us anyways is going to ensure that the infrastructure can support the transportation needs that we have down here.
That will take enthusiastic advocacy.
Yes.
And all three of you are capable of doing it. All right. So since you brought it up, I'm going to go ahead and ask this question. I wondered whether or not I wanted to ask it or not, but there are a lot of people, and two of you have either mentioned it or alluded to it, the cost of tolls going up and down the turnpike and getting to downtown and the cost of getting that done. There are a lot of people living in South Dade County who are really frustrated by that. And they want to know if there is anything, or do you have any ideas on how you could lower or eliminate the tolls for working people in South Dade who have to go all the way up to downtown for their jobs or further?
Well, I would definitely address that.
Yeah, a few people asked that question, and I was wondering whether or not I wanted to ask it, but I said, you guys have talked about it, so let's talk about it. Go ahead, Miss.
$14 a day I spent going to class. $14 a day I spent in toll because I lived in Florida City. So I got on exit 0. Nobody's down here but Jesus. And so when I think about, and if I'm not mistaken, you're not supposed to put a toll on the interstate, but we're just gonna leave that one alone. But making sure that that it hits somewhere hurts. So as you can see, the toll, all the people want to play nice now because people aren't on this road as much. But I think the power needs to go back to the people when it comes to tolls. It's getting absolutely ridiculous. It should not cost me $25 to make sure I'm getting to the other side of Miami when what I'm doing in Miami is to benefit down here. We're losing money that could be spent here, that could be circulated within our community. So if the people don't see, whether it's county, state, federal, but our job as legislators would be to get everybody else to see you're hurting our communities by putting this toll. You think you're getting money and allocating it someplace else? No, that's $14 a day. If I'm getting paid $14 an hour, I just lost an hour of my work every single day to pay for tolls. That does not include gas. That does not include detours that I would have to take because of traffic. And it hasn't done anything worse. They've been working on I-95 since I was 11 years old, y'all. And they still not done with I-95. And it makes you wonder, what are we doing with the money? What are we doing with the money? If you look at the budget that was just passed, and I know my time is up, but if you look at the budget that was just passed and the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars that was going to capital improvement, we have the money. We don't need to be charging all these tolls. Like, we really don't. We have the money. So it comes down to making sure that the people who are in the position to make the difference, that we're holding them accountable. All
right. Mr. Chambliss, what would you do about tolls for working people in South Dade County? A lot of people want to know.
Pick up what you left off. What are we doing with the money? Because if we're getting unfairly charged with tolls based on the different options that we have to go in and out of South Dade, then maybe we need to reevaluate what the percentage is of those monies that are being reinvested in South Dade. If you told me, okay, well, there's an adjusted percentage of the dollars that are being reinvested in the South Dade community, if that's what you told me, then this wouldn't be as much of a problem. But we know that currently doesn't exist, right? As a matter of fact, we know that we're being forced to pay these tolls just based on the way that Miami-Dade County is made up and where the resources are. So it's something that has to be done. And I honestly think that there could be a solution if we looked at how that money was spent, and if that money could be reinvested in South Dade, then that would make much more sense compared to right now pretty much holding us in a headlock and forcing us to pay tolls that are completely unfair.
You'll find that South Dade County is a donor community to other communities in the state that pay those tolls. Mr. Ford, what do you think about the tolls that are being charged? Because there are a few people, actually a lot of people, who want to know whether or not anything can be done about the cost of having to drive all the way to downtown.
Well, if in my last chat with Miss Corona, she basically gave me a template that if we look at what we're doing now, a lot of people are working from home, which has decreased the traffic that's on the roads. And I think if we now, those same tax revenues that would be generated with people going through the tolls, if they could be used to incentivize businesses to, again, create work from home opportunities, especially for those that live at extreme distances, that one will help alleviate the traffic. It will put less traffic on the road. It would also put less pollution in our environment. So with those two benefits alone, in addition to the tax breaks that those businesses may receive, it may be a way of helping to incentivize for one reason, but we're getting an environmental benefit as well on the other end. Now, in addition to that, what I would also say is, again, we need to now begin petitioning the state. Hey, listen, if we're going to generate all these taxes here, let's keep these dollars here. We realize that they roll upstream for some reason. I thought everything rolled downhill, but apparently in Florida, things roll backwards. So with that understanding, I would, one, try to give business incentives to encourage them to create opportunities for many of their employees to work from home so that they will then create less of a traffic jam or log jam impacting our community and our environment.
Great. All right. Well, let's stick with you, Mr. Ford. What would you do differently to make public transportation more accessible to the citizens of South Dade County, particularly the senior citizens?
Well, I mean, I know county has a number of things for senior citizens where they will pick them up and deliver them, door to door, whether they're going to, shopping or whether they're going to a doctor's appointment. I do know that that's there, but I do also know that the capacity to do it doesn't exist, because I've also often had, my godmother call me and complain of instances where I've had to intervene, unfortunately. But I think, again, looking at the resources, working with those entities that already have an infrastructure in place, and find out what we can do to help them build capacity so that we can improve the service that they are able to provide. Now, again, going back to that municipal bond, whatever we got to do to get the rail in place, that's what we need to do. I mean, from my understanding and talking to many of our commissioners, the half a penny that they sold us was actually inadequate to do what they promised us. So in essence, they lied. And so because they lied, now we are stuck complaining about something that will never happen if we don't basically take it up by the bootstraps and come up with a plan that's going to make it happen in the long run. So moving forward, I think what we need to do is, again, let's look at what we can do in spite of, rather than to complain about what's happened in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to begin to wrap things up here a little bit. First of all, I just want to tell all three of you that you're all clear thinkers. You got some great ideas. Here to have the intensity and the will to go out and execute and implement. And so I think that the citizens and the voters of District 117 will satisfy any of the three of you in position. So they've got their work cut out for them. I mean, you're going to have to get those voters out and make sure that they are supporting you or whoever they would like to support. But it's more important to get them out, because with COVID-19, you're still faced with this on August 18th. In the way that we're faced with now, there could be very low voter turnout. So the person who is able to get most of those people out, I think, is going to have an opportunity to prevail in this race. Did away with runoffs, right? There's no runoff in this race. All right. That too, unintentionally. But you're going to have an opportunity now to take a minute to make some closing remarks and to talk about why the voters should consider you when they go to vote on August 18th. Why they should go out and vote in the first place, because that's extremely important. So let's take this again in alphabetical order, and we'll start again with you, Mr. Chambliss.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And thank you, Senator. We appreciate you assisting with this forum. Look, we know that it's important to vote. We have to change the direction of our country. We have seen what failed leadership at the White House and many times in the governor's mansion has done. And we have to make sure that we begin to turn that around with this election. So we have to vote. If it's safer to vote by mail, you need to register to vote by mail. But more than anything, we have to make sure that we vote. Look, I think I'm the best candidate for this particular position because not only do I have the government experience and the policy experience that it takes to walk in day one ready to lead, but also I have the legislative achievements that I have been a part of to address issues in the South Dade community already. But not just that, also because honestly, I've heard from the citizens of South Dade. I've heard from the families. They've come into my office and many times they've asked for assistance in the way of government support. And my whole professional life has been all about providing access to the government for communities that many times get left out. Look, guys, they didn't come in my office and talk about Democrat versus Republican. They did not even really address any of the issues that have to do with many of the partisan bickering that we see. They wanted to know if their kids were going to be in safe communities. They were worried about their ability or lack of to pay for their energy bills. They were worried about where are the jobs in South Dade because they want to work, but there's no job that pays a living wage. These are quality of life issues. As your next state representative, I will go into Tallahassee and I will fight to make sure that we have a better quality of life moving forward and a better future for our children. Thank you.
Closing remarks.
I'm sorry. Did you say me? I didn't hear you. Did you?
Yes, Mr. Ford. Your closing remarks here. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Harold Ford. I'm your candidate for House District 117. The reason why I believe I'm the best candidate is one, my experience as an educator, my experience as a business owner and a small and business background, as well as my acumen. One thing I will look to do day one going into office is assess the topography of Tallahassee. It is not an easy road to navigate. I know many that have gone there and have went with good intentions. But again, building relationships, understanding, courting people, understanding how to navigate through those waters just to do what's necessary for District 117. Now, with my business acumen, I understand what it takes to help a small business go, how to help it build capacity, and then hopefully, if it gets to that level, help them either franchise it or go for those big contracts that definitely will help take them to the next level. As an educator, which I've done for 20 plus years, I understand the education system, its importance and its significance to what it can do to the future of our country and how it can impact our young people by one, giving them the foundation that they need to grow and be successful in. But moving forward, also, I want to make sure that we also understand how to build coalitions, reaching out to different partners, both public and private, understanding what it's going to take to, one, make sure that they prioritize District 117 the way I prioritize it, because I know that's what you would want. So with that said, I'm here with innovative ideas. I'm here thinking out of the box, and I'm here to bring you to that next level. So if you're looking for a candidate who's going to take you to that next level and will be always open and honest with you, I'm your man, Harold Ford, a man of ethics, a man of integrity, but more importantly, a man of God. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Mrs. Jessica Laguerre Hylton.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Again, this is Jessica Laguerre Hylton, candidate for Florida House District 117. So all of my life, I've grown up here in South Dade. I went to elementary school here, twice a Cougar, once a Panther, and once a Raider. And I've seen firsthand many elected officials across our county come and take more than they give. I've lived here. I went to school here. I started my business here, my nonprofit. I've been married here. I've been homeless here. I've started my career here, and I worship here. So South Dade, I take this election very personal. We have an opportunity as a community to get in front of some of the issues that have crushed other neighborhoods. Part of sending me to Tallahassee is not sending me to do anything other than what I've already been doing for the past 13 years. I have been fighting and advocating for affordable and public housing and transparency within those sectors. I have already been fighting for businesses and making sure that they receive the economic support that they need, making sure that there's tech jobs here as well too, that we're not just going backwards and just bringing out certain industries that are now dated, but making sure that we're moving forward and towards a future that is truly bright for everyone. I was an educator for many years. I've taught every grade from kindergarten to 7. So I know what the teachers are going through, but I also know what the students are going through, having gone to Colonial Drive Elementary and watching kids in Perrine Elementary receive a different education than what I've received. As I mentioned before, I've been homeless here in this community, so I know the programs that don't work. I know the processes and the things that they tell you to do that sound right and are politically correct, but are truly broken and need revision. I know what it's like to lose a home and to also try to purchase a home in the blockage and the barriers that they are put in place. As a Black woman, I am at the bottom of the list for everything. My election, just to show you, case in point, my election would mean me being the first Black woman to ever hold this seat, despite being in a district that's 40% Black and 52% women. I'm at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to access for funding for businesses, because women receive less than 12% of all business funding. And if you're a woman of color, less than 6% of all business funding, and less than 1% if you're in the tech sector. I know what it's like to have people ignore you and to walk over you and to make sure that you don't have the same opportunities as someone else. So sending me to Tallahassee is sending someone who's going to fight for everyone in the community. Thank you again, Jessica Laguerre, candidate for Florida House District 117.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All three of these candidates are all excellent. And the voters have a choice. You need to make that choice. I've got 2 messages, one for the candidates and one for the voters. Remember, candidates, the people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you're going to have to make sure that people understand that you really do care about them. And to the voters, participate. You have to participate, because if you don't, it could be in the form of a protest or making your voices heard in other forums, but you're never heard so loud as you are when you vote. And remember, if you don't fight for what you want, then you deserve exactly what you get. So make sure you get out there and make sure you take 5 people with you to the polls, or make sure they vote absentee ballot if you don't want to go to the polls. But for God's sake, participate. So I want to thank all of the candidates today, Kevin Chambliss, Harold Ford, and Jessica Laguerre Hylton, for the great work they did here tonight, for the people who were involved in the South Dade Democratic Black Caucus, and for all of the great work they did technically and also logistically in getting all of this work done. Thank you very much. And if there are no other questions here, I'd like to sign off and say good night to everyone. Thank you for your participation.